What is going on, guys and girls? Welcome to Europa Universalis 4, where we continue with our North Sea Empire series. And unlike the Carling series that I converted last time, this time I will stick with only one country. It was fun trying that out, switching between nations, but I'm not going to be doing this time. We're going to be following the Yinglings all the way through and see what we can achieve. Today there's going to be no gameplay. This is why this is called episode 0, because we're not going to move forward in time. We actually have moved forward in time for one day, but that has a very specific reason that I will not reveal today. I will reveal that in episode 1. So that's something you guys can look forward to. Today, all I want to do is I just want to go over the changes, because obviously the converter just changes things, because obviously CK2 and EU4 are different games, have different mechanics and so on and so forth. And in addition to that, the converter can only do so much. There's certain things that just are not that amazing. So I spent quite a considerable amount of time fixing just the scenario, so that it makes more sense. There's many changes, as I said, there's so many changes I've made. I'm not going to be able to go into detail into every single one, but I will tell you the big things that I've done. It might be a little bit all over the place here, because it's really a lot of things that I've changed, or that, just have been changed. So sometimes I might be trying, jumping around, but I'll try to keep it, logical in a way. So yeah, what are we going to do? I guess I'm just going to show you a couple of map modes first. You can obviously see, well, the independent realms at this moment. Nothing looks too different, but obviously you can see that, well, first of all, we don't have the North Sea Empire here, we have Norway. Now, there were some suggestions that I create a custom nation and then, create custom ideas for all of these nations, or specifically for the North Sea Empire. And I've decided against this for a couple of reasons. First of all, it would be a lot of work, and I already spent a lot of time fixing the save, so, that was one thing. But that was actually not the main reason. The main reason was that the converter just set it up as Norway. We, got some decent ideas, and really changing that would have actually made more effort in a sense that I had to make sure that the dynasties are the same. Like right now, we actually have the Yinglings not only in Norway, but they're also represented in independent nations such as France and Lotharingia. And when I say independent, I mean they are obviously Norway's vassals, but they obviously have their own rulers and so on and so forth. So having created a custom nation, I could have called the dynasty Yngling, but the game wouldn't have necessarily recognized them as the same family. And so I decided that, the better way is to just leave it and just go with regular Norway. After all, Norway is, the country we started out as in CK2, and, has always been like the title, the primary title. The empire only was added on top of that, I guess. But yeah, there's going to be plenty of room for customization to, I guess, make our country feel more like the North Sea Empire. But yeah, anyway, so that's the map. As you can see, we have independent vassals. So basically the idea behind this was that for all the empires that were out there, I decided to make all of the king vassals independent. I did not make anyone else, no dukes, no anything independent, because I just didn't really feel like it. So all I really did was I gave independence to the kings. Now in Norway, this is well, I mean, you can obviously see France is independent, Lotharingia is independent, Denmark is independent, Chernihiv is independent, and obviously they have their lands. For example, Chernihiv also has Estonia, Denmark also has Vladimir. Now, you also see that Sweden is independent, Scotland and Wales, but what you will see is that we actually have cores here. This is because, these countries are part of the core territory of the North Sea Empire. They were already incorporated into the empire, and so I decided that we're just going to have cores on these lands. And this is good for two reasons. First of all, in the cases of Scotland and Wales, once we annex those nations, we annex them immediately. Like, because we already have cores there, they're annexed within a single month. and they don't cost anything, which is really cool and makes sense in my opinion. And secondly, should we, for some reason, lose these vassals because of independence, wars, or whatever, then we still have a way of reconquering our core territories with relative ease because we have cores there already. And that was kind of the second reasoning there. Now, you'll probably wonder, well, okay, what's with Ireland? What's with Finland? We had 2 kings there, but that's not true. We had viceroys, and so I decided they're not independent enough to actually have these lands, and so yeah, that's why they don't exist. And I also decided that I was briefly considering whether or not Norway and England should be in a personal union, but I decided against this because we already have way too many vassals. We already have 7 vassals, and some of them are already quite unhappy. So yeah, I think this is not really necessary. Now, one thing I did do, and I did do that with all the other nations as well, I've used prestige to placate the rulers. As you can see here, the Liberty Desire of Wales, for example, is at 0 right now because minus 100 of placated ruler. I just did this for basically all nations because, yeah, none of these nations were currently in an independence revolt or anything. So it is to be assumed that they have somewhat of a control over their vassals. And so I wanted to give them as much of a bonus as I could. So I did the same thing I did for Norway, for Carpathia. So Carpathia has Hungary as their vassal, and they also have cores on their lands. The Holy Roman Empire is different. We have, because obviously they have their own mechanics, so you can see the empire here. Moravia is currently the emperor, and then you see these orange brownish colors, those are the electors, and then green are the regular princes. Yeah, that is that. Do you see the Imperial Authority, which is currently dropping quite quickly because there's only 5 electors at the moment. There's 2 heretic princes. One is Valdensian, and the other one is actually Shia Muslim, which is kind of interesting. And yeah, the empire, the Holy Roman Empire is basically destroyed. Not really a surprise. I feel like this is a really good representation of that. It's also all over the place as well, which is kind of funny. But yeah, other than that, we have got the Mongolia. Mongolia doesn't have any king vassals, so they did not get broken apart. And for India here, I did the same thing. Again, I have released the king vassals, so the Tagadorids have 2 king vassals, and Rajasthan has, well, a couple more, as you can see here. And once again, their core empire, they have cores on, right? So I did this the same across the board, basically. All right, now one other thing I also did, I guess fixed the same across all countries, was that tributaries I turned into marches. The reason being that marches have like a special status. They can't be annexed immediately, so in a way they have more autonomy in a way, because they can't just randomly be annexed, right? And so there's certain marches are Wallachia. Wallachia are a march to Ruthenia. Apulia is a march to Greece, Hindu Greece. And then this country is a march to Rajasthan, and this country, Bengal, is a march to Deccan, or the Tagadorids. I think that was pretty much all of them. There's 2 tributaries that have actually left as tributaries. It's Charamasya and Zaporozhye, because both of those are tributaries of Yuan, the Yuan Empire that we can actually see over here. And they have the regular tributary mechanic, so I thought this actually fits quite well. Now, speaking of Yuan, I've made some adjustments to them as well, because in CK2, they actually start out in a golden age. So I gave them a golden age. So that their golden age immediately starts in 1444, will last for the next 50 years, give them obviously all their bonuses. In addition, I have given them, I've given them 100 meritocracy, which is their legitimacy. I've given them 100 prestige, 3 stability, full manpower, a little bit of gold, and so on and so forth, just because they're supposed to be super good. Also, I've given them 75 mandate. Now, I didn't give them 100 mandate because the AI would immediately use that to press a reform, and they would be back to 0 mandate. So I decided to just give them 75, let it build up slowly, and then the AI can do or can decide what they do with it on their own. That was kind of my thinking there. Yeah, other than that, Yuan has a couple more tributaries actually, not just the 2 I've mentioned. I've basically tag switched over to Yuan, and I've given them all the tributaries that would accept right at this second, that would become a tributary diplomatically right at this moment. I've just given to them of the start, and we'll see how the AI develops over time. Yeah, other than that, let me quickly check, because as I said, this is quite a lot of stuff to consider. Right, I did also, I want to show you the religious map mode here. For the most part, this has just been the converter. I may have adjusted the province religion here and there, but, you know, for the most part, I've left this to the converter, and you can see there's a lot of heresies and stuff going on. Really fun. This is obviously going to play a huge role. There's 2 things I've done specifically. For the Tengri nations of Mongolia and Yuan, I've selected a syncretic faith. So for Yuan, I've chosen... So the Yuan Emperor is Tengri, but I've chosen Confucian as a syncretic faith. And for Mongolia, I've chosen Hindu, just because that's how it was historically in CK2. So I wanted to make that adjustment right there. Yeah. Okay, hold on. Let me quickly just get an overview of what else I wanted to talk about. Right, so I got this. Yeah, I do want to show you the ruling families. We've got the Borjin, obviously, in Mongolia and Yuan. We've got the Seljuks here, the Fatimids. Then we've got a very large Indian clan, the Kalyani Chalukya, ruling Rajasthan, but also 2 other nations here, actually vassals to the Tributaries. So this is going to be interesting. And then, of course, we've got the Yinglings on their thrones. Now, some of the dynasties are actually wrong. For example, the Scottish, Welsh, Danish, Swedish families, they're not correct. I don't know why the converter did not decide to, bring them over. I can't really explain it. It's just the way it is. It worked with the Yinglings, so I really don't know. Also, we actually have the Abbasids here, not Midas level, but I'll talk about this a little bit later as well. Yeah, so I talked about India, I talked about China and Mongolia. As for the Seljuks, I have actually created some vassals for them. I have created basically their exclaves I made into vassals. So we have 2 vassals up here, but they also have claims on this stuff because they just kind of have claims in this general area. And I've made the Egyptian exclave into a vassal, and this is perhaps the most important one, the Abbasids. They are a vassal because this is the Sunni Caliph who has been in Chernigov for a very long time actually, and yeah, he's obviously a vassal to Rum, but yeah, I just kind of felt like this is a good way to represent them. Also, creating vassals that can be controlled is actually not a nerf to a country. It's actually a buff, because at this point a nation can only have like maybe 20 states, not more than that, and so every other province that you have doesn't really give you much value because the autonomy is just so high from it being a territory. So releasing these vassals is actually good for in the long run. Yeah, other than that, I already talked about Ruthenia and Greece. Right, I have created this little nation, the Giadids. They were independent initially, but I've made them a vassal of the Fadlids because I wanted to account for 2 wars that were currently going on in CK2 at the end. I checked all the wars, and there were basically the only one that really had an impact here was this one war, or these 2 wars, where a Fadlid vassal declared war on the Giadids and the Fadlids themselves had declared war, and both of them were winning. None of them were at 100% just yet, but one of them was at like 50%, the other one at 75%. And so I decided that I'm just going to make the Giadids a vassal here, so they still have, you know, a chance to maybe become independent, but yeah, likely they're just going to get annexed. For the Subuks, I did the same. I did for Rum. I basically just made their exclave. They have an exclave all the way to the south here. I made that one independent. But yeah, just because they can't really reach that. So this is actually a buff to them as well. Also, there was some, yeah, pre-existing relationships, specifically concerning Sardinia, Corsica. So as you can see, they are already allied to Carpathia. This is how it was in CK2, and they have certain royal marriages with Thrace and Suburcia and Maghreb. Now, they were actually also allied with Maghreb, but unfortunately the game started out with those two as rivals, so there wasn't really much I could do. Yeah, let's once more talk about the HRE. They are obviously exploded, as I said, and we saw the Emperor and we saw the Electors, but there's a couple other things I've done as well, specifically for the Emperor, because the Emperor 2 started out with 2 tributaries, the Papal States and Thrace, and I have made them marches as well. Unfortunately, though, this means they're probably just going to be declaring independence immediately, because yeah, Moravia is so small. These guys have a liberty desire of 100. So there's going to be a war basically immediately, and the Emperor is going to be overthrown. But I feel like it kind of makes sense. They just got absolutely crushed by Norway. So, you know, I kind of can see that. It makes sense to me in a way. Yeah. Other than that, we've got that. The alliances I already talked about. Right, now there's some wonders. There's 3 wonders in particular that actually carried over. One of them is towards Haven that we have right here. I didn't do that. Those was, by the way, the converter who did that, right? So we got a great harbor here. Sailor increase +1, which I'm not sure. Does that actually mean we gain 1 extra sailor? That would be... that would actually be kind of hilarious, but I don't know. It doesn't actually show here. And naval force number +15%. Now, this is actually a big deal. And what I also did, I have made towards Haven or Trøndelag, whatever, into a world port. Now, normally, this is just like natural harbor or like one of these other things, but I've made it into a world port just because it, you know, it truly makes sense. So I did that. And there is the wonder in Baghdad, the Great Walls. Attrition for enemies, local defensiveness, and caravan power. And we have the Royal Palace in Karakorum, which gives monthly splendor and number of states for Mongolia. So that's really cool. Those are all the wonders. The gardens did not port over, neither did the university in Jan. And something that I really, really disliked was that the cathedral did not convert over either. So, you know, it should have been somewhere here, and it's not made an impact, which is kind of upsetting because the cathedral was kind of a big thing. So yeah. Anyway, other than that, I have tried to still account for for 2 things. First of all, for the Gotland merchants, the Merchant Republic, and secondly, I tried to account for the very powerful clergy of Durham. And so what I did was I have simply added estates. So the clergy is in control over Northumberland here. And then wherever the Gotland people, the Gotland Merchant Republic had trade posts, this is where I have given them control. Now, you'll see that actually a lot of their power is in like Denmark and Sweden. So I don't think... Yeah, it doesn't actually show if I click on it, but I basically did the same thing for Sweden and Denmark. I've added all the provinces that, you know, that were part of the Merchant Republic. I gave this to the burghers. So you can see it here. You can see it, well, here in Lund, Holland, in Elfsborg, and obviously Gotland itself, right? So yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, already talked about religion. Okay, and now one last thing that I want to mention here is cultures. Now, I didn't make, as I said, too much adjustments to religion because the converter does a relatively good job of that. But I did have to make some adjustments to the cultures specifically because well, here and there were things wrong. I just added them in. But for the big things I did was I broke up the German, the Russian, and the Italian cultures. Because in EU4, there's no such thing, in CK2, there's no such thing as Saxon, Bavarian, Swabian, or Muscovite, or Tuscan, Lombard, and so on and so forth. There's basically just Italian. Or German. I mean, in the case of Italy, it might not even seem all that bad, but for Germany, this is really bad. Like, look at this. Look at this. All of this was just German, right? And that would have just been insane. This would have, on one hand, actually kind of made it easy, because all you would have to do is accept one culture, and you're basically good. This actually makes it harder to control, and it also just, to me, seems cool. Right? It just makes more sense. Now, you'll notice that I have basically switched the cultures wherever it made sense. Like in the traditional Dutch provinces, I've turned German into Dutch and so on and so forth. And you can see Prussian over here. So some of this I kind of added in. For example, there's like Germans that were in like originally Czech territories, and so I just kind of thought who was close to that they would have the influence there. But you'll see that there's the regular German culture still around, and that's in those places where I just couldn't really figure out which culture it would actually be. Like, would this be Austrian? Would this be Saxons, or whoever conquered this? Because obviously they displaced the Croatians and Hungarians, and who knows, right? I mean, this is definitely Crusaders up here. So I decided to just leave German here. I did the same with for the Italians. So where I knew exactly what the culture would be, I changed it. And when I didn't know, I just left it as Italian, as you can see here. And yeah, for the Russians, I did the same thing. There's only 2 minor provinces that are still Russian. The rest have more appropriate cultures. Now, there were some minor adjustments. I added Highlander for the Scots. I also added Leonese, Galician, and Aragonese here in Iberia. And I added in Albanian, because that doesn't exist. I added in Pontic, just to break up the big Greek group. And I also added in Sami here in the north. Yeah. Right, and then I also broke up the Berber culture a little bit, but not too much. And there's some more minor adjustments, but yeah, I guess you get the idea. That was basically it. That was the conversion video. If you have any questions, you can obviously leave them in the comments. I hope I addressed everything, but if there's anything, you can obviously let me know, and I will talk about that in the first episode. So thanks for watching. I hope you're pumped, and I'll see you next time.